5 of Android Bootcamp. Today we are going to have an introduction to Flutter session, which will be taken by Aditya Thakur. Now, giving a brief introduction of Aditya Thakur, he is a Flutter developer with experience in building various cross-platform applications. He has previously been a speaker at the Flutter Global Summit 2021 and has hosted a number of events at universities and clubs across India. Aditya is also a creator with 4.75k subscribers on his YouTube channel and a 500 plus member Discord community, whose name is teamaditya.co. He believes in adding value and giving back to the community. So I think we shall start with Aditya straight away. So Aditya, if you are ready, you can just share your screen. I will stop sharing. Yeah.
So I hope my screen is visible and things is fine.
Yes, it is visible.
Okay. So hello everyone. I am Aditya Thakur and I am a Flutter developer and I've been working with Flutter for over a year now. So in today's session, we'll be looking at what Flutter is and how should you get started with it. And also we'll be looking at how does it compare to native Android development? What is the future scope in it? What projects can you make? And some of the jobs and other opportunities available in it. So really excited to be here today. And if you have any questions, like feel free to jump in, ask them and share anything that you might have. Also feel free to use the chat if you're not able to speak. And so since I've been working with Flutter for some time, like I see a lot of future in it. And that is what I'll be trying to show you, as in I'll be trying to tell you what it is like, and it's totally up to you if you want to take it up. And since you have already worked with Android, Flutter would be really easy to get started in because you'll already have most of the setup done. You'll have Android Studio installed to your devices, and you just need to download the Flutter Sdk. I'll also show that. And without any further wait, let's get started with it. So yeah, I have I have already introduced. So let's go into it. So more recently, like you must have noticed, there are a lot of people using mobile applications, and according to surveys too, like most of the time that you spend on your mobile is done in apps, which could be either social or such apps. You don't spend as much time browsing Chrome or other websites. So mobile apps continue to grow, and if you are a student developer or if you are a student entrepreneur, you want to look into like what should you choose for your next mobile application. Let us say you want to start something, like you want to do a startup, or maybe you are in your third, fourth year, you are looking to build projects. Even if you are even if you are in your first year and you want to go into mobile development, there are always these questions, as in what to take up, like what language should you take up, what stack should you work with. And that is something I too had when I initially started. So I wanted to do mobile development so that I can build some of these applications, publish them to Play Store, because there is always this joy of using something that you have built yourself. And I think as developers, we should do that a lot more. Like if you are facing some problem, you can maybe solve it yourself by building something around it. Like if you're not able to keep up with your DSA things, so you can build like a tracker or something which gives you that joy of first building a project, and then as you are going with your progress, you can mark it, celebrate it as you go. So that is something I believe in. And the first way of doing things is mostly like Android development. So when I initially started, Java and Kotlin were really big. If you wanted to build Android applications, the way to go was like you downloaded Android Studio, then you would drag and drop certain elements. Like it's really easy. There are a lot of elements available. If you want to add a text view, or if you want to add certain things, a button, maybe you can drag and drop it on screen. Maybe you can write code for that, and then later add functionality through either of the languages, and then publish your app to Play Store. So really easy thing. And I hope like you two are really familiar with it right now. Like you know your way around Android Studio, and you can build basic applications in it, which is really cool. But the problem arises that if you're building applications for Android, they would only work on Android. And you're writing this code, you're writing all this code to build your applications, but they would only run on one single platform. Maybe there are friends of you, or maybe you yourself use an iOS device. You might have a Apple iPhone, and you might not be able to run that application on your mobile device, which is like a drawback. If you want to build applications for iOS, you might have to learn a different tech stack. Like you might have to learn Swift to build iOS application, which is a really a difficult task for a student developer like us. So you already did Android and all that development. Now you have to go out and learn Swift, try to rebuild your application for iOS devices, and that would be too much work. So with that said, like you might also need a landing page. After you build your applications, you might want to share it to some of your people out there. So you want to build a page something like this. Like it's not a static web page, but you are like sort of, maybe you want to collect email IDs. So it's more of a web app where you enter an email ID and you can save it to your storage. So it's a web app, or maybe like if you have to do it from the web development side, I think you might need Node.js for that. And otherwise, like if you are building a mobile application, you initially built it in Android, but you want to run it on iOS, and you also want to create a web app or a web page for it. So how do you do that? You might want to learn different tech stacks for it. The first would be the Java and Kotlin for Android development. Then there is Swift for iOS. Then there is the whole web development field that you might have to venture into to learn how to build a page that collects emails. So this is when Flutter comes in. Flutter is a framework that sort of solves almost all of these problems. There are like 6 problems, one solution. And what Flutter does is basically lets you build applications for multiple devices with the single code base. And there are 6 different platforms that it renders on. So there is iOS and Android, your mobile development operating systems, and there is web. Like you can build web applications with Flutter, and you can also build applications for desktop like Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. And Windows, Mac OS, and Linux are still in beta. But what is cool is, like, as developers, you can write code once and create applications for all these different platforms, which is mind blowing. Like you have to learn just one single framework and a language, and you
Aditya, your
can
voice is breaking a bit.
possibly build applications for any of these platforms. Imagine, I should turn off my video, I guess, because I am on my.
Okay, sure. Whatever works fine for you works fine for us.
Yeah. Give me a minute.
Uh,
Hostel and the Wi-Fi is a bit. I'm really sure
oh,
about that.
okay, okay. Sure, whatever works
So
fine for you
is
works
the
fine.
audio better right now?
Yes,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is. It is
So I
better.
was
Yeah.
saying, like, with the single code base, you can run your applications on multiple devices like Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Web, iOS, and Android, which is really cool. You don't have to learn all these different languages that build on these platforms. Instead, you can learn just one framework, and it sort of gives you this ability to build applications for all these different platforms. So that is what we want to look into. We want to look into what is Flutter, what are like the building blocks of it, and how as a native Android developer you can migrate to it, because you have already done these workshops, and maybe you want to just get an overview of what things are like in Flutter. So we want to do all that today in this session. And like, I would really love if you can stay till the end. And Just let me know how it goes. So let's get started with it. And what I want to first do is I want to go over to like how can you get started with Flutter. So if you'll go over to your Chrome or any other browser, what you want to do is basically search for Flutter, and the official website is flutter.dev, which is the official website, and it has on its home page that you can build applications for any screen. So what Flutter does is it's basically transforming this app development process where you can deploy beautiful applications for all these different platforms. So some of the features that Flutter offers is, first one is fast, because the Flutter code compiles to like the ARM or Intel machine code as well as JavaScript for fast performance on any device. So what Flutter does differently is basically it tries to compile the code natively to the machine which is it's running on. So that offers for like faster performance, and you already have the multi-platform advantage or the cross-platform advantage, like reach users on any screen. As a startup or as someone building your product, you might want to offer services that work like on all these different platforms. Maybe your users want to quickly access a web app, so you can build web applications with it. Maybe you want to build a desktop application where your users can view the dashboard for particular things. You can do that with it. And there are a lot of platforms under Android and iOS too, like there are tablets and mobile devices that you want to render to. Also it does transform your like workflow, because you can take control of this code base. There are a lot of options available in Flutter, and it's trusted by many. I'll also come back to it, what are some of the well-known companies in India using it. So that is when we talk about the job opportunities and the future in it. And possibly if you use Google Pay, you are already interacting with the Flutter app, because the latest version of the Google Pay app uses Flutter. So this is like a very interesting story, since Google Pay handles all these different interactions, and maybe you must have seen the UI itself, which is really cool, and all these animations that play in it. So Google Pay also uses Flutter to do the mobile payments and all that stuff. So there are a lot of companies out there that are using it. If you know Dream 11, it used it initially, like there was when they were building their initial product, they used to use Dream 11, although right now they might not be using it as actively. There are a lot of other companies like BMW, eBay, Philips Hue, which recently released their application, and they're all like built on Flutter. And one of the things about Flutter is like it's open source, which means anyone can view the code, anyone can contribute to it, create an issue, make a pull request, and you can always like check out their GitHub repository. And that is it. So the first question that you might have when you're starting out with Flutter, okay, like okay, I know Flutter is a framework, but what language do we write code in it, and how do we write code in it? So I'll come to the how do we write code in it, but the language that we use to write code in Flutter is Dart. And Dart is a very powerful language. It's smart even if you're not using Flutter for a number of use cases. And Flutter is powered by Dart. It's optimized for fast language, fast apps on any platform. So yeah, so there are some latest news, but let's go over to how can you get Flutter. So we'll have to go over to the get started button, and it will take you to something called install Flutter. So how do you install Flutter is there are all these different options. You can either install it for Windows, Mac OS, Linux, or maybe Chrome OS. But since I'm on Windows, I can install it for Windows by going over to it. And it will tell you about the system requirements, like what system can you run it on? It's Windows 7 or later. What is the disk space you require, and what like other tools that you might need. And the first step is getting the Flutter SDK. So you can download it as a zip file. This would have like the installation bundle to get started. And what you have to do is once you get the zip, you will have to extract it in a place, and maybe save to it, and then all you have to do is update your path, uh, which as developers you might know, like you have to edit those environment variables and put in the Flutter bin there. And this page mostly has everything that you want to go over with, but let me just show it to you like on my device. Where do I have it? So if I'll go over to, I want to go over to this PC in my C drive, which is very full. I have a folder called SRC, and this is where I have my Flutter. So it has everything like from the GitHub repository itself. There is the bin, and that is how like you mostly do it. So if I'll go over to my command prompt and I just type in Flutter. Let me zoom in for you. So I have typed in Flutter version. It will say it is showing that a new version of Flutter is available, and it will show me my current version. So I should be right now on 2.5.1, which like sort of was the latest release a few days back. So 2.5.0 was the biggest version of Flutter so far, because there were a lot of pull requests merged and there were a lot of changes made. But 2.5.1 was a hot fix made to the Flutter release, because there were certain things that were broken in the major release. So they had to fix it in a hot fix. And that is the version I should be on. I don't know why it's not running, but we'll give it some time. Till then, what I want to do is I want to go over to the GitHub repository and quickly show you like where everything is. So Flutter has its Flutter GitHub repositories. This is the company page and this is the official repository. And you can see like there are a lot of issues, open pull request and also projects. And you can actually create an issue if you are running into something. Someone from the team normally does take it up and they are really helpful if you have any issues. There's the whole Flutter GitHub repository, and you can also check out the code if you want to. If you have any problems, you can create an issue. So I'll come back to the Flutter website. We are waiting on this Flutter version to run, and for some reason it's not running. Okay. So it's Flutter 2.5.1, and I am right now on something called channel stable. You don't have to worry about it. But you'll also notice like there is a tool called Dart 2.14.2. So Dart is the programming language. Flutter is the framework. If you have to write code, you write in Dart, and Flutter does the rendering part. Like it has its own Flutter engine, which you can also see here inside the GitHub company page. Like there is something called an engine. This is written in C++. And this engine does most of the heavy work. Like it renders, like is a portable runtime for hosting like Flutter application, and it implements these core libraries, animations, graphics, and you can interact with Flutter via the Flutter framework, which provides a modern reactive framework and all that. So you can go over this if you want to. You can check out the GitHub repository, but you don't have to worry about all this when you're just starting out. What we'll do is right now I would just go over to my desktop, and here I can run something called Flutter create. So after you have successfully installed Flutter, which is basically downloading a zip file, extracting it, and just setting the environment paths, you'll have access to something called the Flutter commands. And there is a command called Flutter create, which is used to create a new project. So let us say I want to create a project that says that is called Bootcamp. So you can type in Flutter create and type in the project name that you want to create, and that should do it. So if you already have Android Studio installed, you can instead use the Android Studio itself to create a new project. But I'm not running Android Studio right now because if you are like Android developers, you might know how much the Android Studio takes up, like how much RAM it takes up. But I'll just use my command prompt to create a new project, and then we'll see like what the default project looks like, and some of the code too. We'll also have a look at that. So you can see a new folder is created here, which is the Flutter project, and I can just type in code and Bootcamp to open this project. Here you have like two options. So you can either use Android Studio, and there is a whole Android set of Android Studio. So you just have to set it up, enable developer options and all that stuff. And also like have a Android emulator, which you might already be using for your Android Bootcamp. Do that, accept the Android emulator, Android licenses and you must be ready. But if you don't want to do that, you can also use VS Code. I am using VS Code because it's lighter on my CPU, because if I'm streaming and also using Android Studio, that doesn't work a lot in my favor. But this is what a default Flutter project looks like. So there is something called an Android directory, and there's everything
Excuse
like
me,
Gradle
Aditya.
files and yeah.
Yeah, there's a question in the chat box. Girish is asking,
Mhm.
is running Flutter on VS Code also a very heavy process?
Not as much. Like if you have to compare it to Android Studio and VS Code, then VS Code is lighter on my CPU personally, and like it totally depends on you. To all the like new people getting started with it, I recommend Android Studio, because I think on Android Studio visualization is a bit easier, and you have all your tools at one place, so you don't have to worry about it. Whereas a VS Code, is lighter on the CPU. So if you're coming from a web development background, you can always use VS Code. It would be something that you're familiar with, and like there are a lot of extensions available as well. So if you are a normal developer, you can always use VS Code for it. Flutter, there wouldn't be much issue. But if you want to use Android Studio, that is good as well. Like I personally prefer Android Studio because it helps you visualize easier, and there are a lot of tools available on that, like at your disposal. They are available in VS Code as well, but it's just some personal preference. All right, so I hope it answers it. Sure. So let me know any questions if you have. We'll take them up. But there are like directories. Like there is one called Android, and there is a folder called iOS. So you'll also see like there is a folder called web. So by default, what Flutter does, install version, it creates application for three different platforms, which is Android, iOS, and the web. So Android folder would have like all the Android files in it. So let us say like later in the project you want to work with the manifest, so you can also find that inside called Android app source main, and uh, there you have it. Like there is the Android manifest.xml, and you can add certain permissions, like maybe you want to use the internet permission or the location permission, so you can add all these permissions here. And you can also do like for iOS, if you want to add certain permissions, you can do that. And similarly, if you want to make some changes, like maybe you're working if you want to maybe change this metadata, right? When you share a link, so the some of the data is visible, like what does the link take you. So you can maybe add a description here, like you want to change the description, maybe call it bootcamp or something. So you can do that, all that part, right? And this Flutter makes it really easy, so you can interact with the native side of things as well as write code. So where do we write code in Flutter? There is a folder called lib, and it has something called main.dart. And majorly as a beginner in Flutter, this is where you work. All your code, everything that you want to do goes in this folder called lib inside dart files. And you can create a new dart file by just creating a new file and calling it this maybe new file dot dart. Okay, I'm really sorry about the caps lock, but this is like the normal way. You can create as many dart files as you want and write code in it, whatever like the code that you want to. By default, there is the main.dart. And as programmers, like we all know that the first file or the first function to get control from the to get control is this main function. So this is where everything starts. This is the main function, and it runs something called the run app, which takes in my app. So I'll come back to what all this is, but let us just try running this project. Like let us see what by default is created by the Flutter team. I will get rid of this file. It's anyway empty. It wouldn't cause much trouble. I wouldn't save these changes right now. I don't want them. And I will come to run and debug, click on run and debug. It should take some time. You can also use your command prompt, like you can run a command called flutter run. That would also run your project. And but for now, I'll just close this. So right now what it's doing is my Flutter, like Flutter is building the project for Chrome. So you can see like launching lib main.dart on Chrome in debug mode. And similarly, if you had like a Android emulator connected, or if you had a iOS simulator, it would run the project on one of those platforms. You can also change the platform from here. Like right now, you can see two devices connected. One is this Chrome, and the other one is possibly the built-in web browser by Microsoft. But if you run this project, this is what it opens up to. So you have a app bar on top, and it says something like Flutter demo homepage, and you have something in the middle which says you have pushed this button this many times. And if you'll click on this floating action button, you'll see like there is an increment of this number on screen. So what is all this? Let me just break it down for you in like very simple terms, so that if you want to later get started with Flutter, it would not be something you haven't heard of. So I'll close these files. I'll clear up some space right now. I'll come to this file. I want to get rid of it because for some reason it is too capitalized. I'll click on delete, move to recycle bin. I'll bring this bar down. All right. So this is the main.dart. I'll close my terminal as well for now. But this is where like everything is. So the first line is an import statement. So what it does is it imports material UI to our Flutter project, and you don't have to worry about immediately. But what happens in Flutter is everything we write, every code we write in Flutter is like a widget. So what are these widgets? Maybe let me just take that up real quick. You can think of widgets as Lego blocks. So if you were working on the Android side of things, you must have seen like how we were dragging one of the elements on screen. Let us say you want to add a button, so you could drag that button, bring it to your mobile screen, and it would show that button on screen. But what happens in Flutter is we have to write code for it, and widgets are like Lego blocks. So let us say you wanted to drag and drop that text element. In Flutter, it would be called a text widget. Similarly, like you have an image widget and all that stuff. So if you'll come back to your code, you'll see like you can get rid of all of this. You don't have to worry about all this right now, and we can clear the code till here. Like we don't want this homepage. And I'll also get rid of these comments. So this is like a basic representation, but what happens is if you want to create a new widget, you can type in like stateless and it would give you two options. There are two types of widgets. One is the stateless and stateful widget. And I wouldn't go into much of it because this workshop is more of an introduction. But what I wanted to show is like everything in Flutter is it's more of a class, and it has to follow certain protocol since it's extending this stateless widget. And you have to define something called a build. We have to define something called the build function. And what I can do is I can add text. I want to use a text widget and I can specify a certain value for it. Let me say hello world, which is the basic one that will be there. I'm getting an error, so I hot art my world or screen. Right now, it's not very good like UI, but this is like a basic Flutter application that says hello world in it. And what I do is I can press in the control and it renders a widget on screen. So this is my first widget. It had this understand later as you go with Flutter, but everything in Flutter is sort of like a widget. So you can use multiple widgets and create an application with it. Right. So let me just clear this. now it's a bit smaller, but it appears a bit better. Like now you can see like the text is a bit better, but this is like the basic Flutter application of a hello world. So I don't want to go into code because this I just wanted to show you more of like what the basic building block is, and that is widget. And there are a lot of options available in it. If you'll come back to the Flutter documentation, what you can do is go over to the document docs. Like let's try to go over this documentation, go over to something called tutorials. So here on the website, like you will have some basic tutorials on how you can build layouts, how you can add certain things to your Flutter application. Also, you will have something called, let me just go to get started. Development background. This might be a good you should know when you are migrating from like Flutter to Android, or how do you, so it says like how do I update widget in Android. You like your views are directly by, like you update your views by directly manipulating them. However, in Flutter, widgets are immutable and are not updated directly. And this is like a basic text widget. It says text, you can pass in a value and you can add certain style to it. Maybe because you were doing it differently as in Android. I'm not much familiar with that, but like there is an XML file and you can add interactivity in a different file. So in Flutter, most of it goes in together. Like if you have a text widget, you can wrap it with a gesture detector if you want to add certain functionality to it. You put in the style in the same widget, so in the same building block, everything goes into that. And it is very very simple to start with. Like it might be intimidating in the first go, but Flutter widgets, like if you know Android development, Flutter has a very short learning curve. So yeah, let's just continue with the presentation. I'll come back a bit. So cross-platform development is not something new. There is also React Native available, that offers you this option of building applications for like multiple devices. But there are certain differences. Like a lot of people ask me, should I learn Flutter or React Native? Like after you decide you want to build applications for multiple platforms, what should be your framework of choice, right? So Flutter and React Native, like the comparison is very common in the Flutter community, but there are certain points like where Flutter wins, and there are certain things that React Native does good. Flutter has like UI rendering, data processing, and synchronization, where it what Flutter does is when you write code in Flutter, it natively compiles it, whereas React Native uses something called bridges. So there is some difference in that, as in you are writing code and it's interacting with the native side of things using bridge in the React Native case. So it's a bit slower, whereas Flutter works better in that case. And there are certain programming areas like language. Flutter uses Dart. Dart is JavaScript, which is language in the community. There are a lot of resources available already on it. There's a big community out there that uses JavaScript. So it is also a very powerful language. And there are like open source libraries. Since React Native is a bit older, Flutter is a bit new. There might be certain things that might not be available in it. And then there are UI design tools. So it also depends on your use case. Like if you're familiar with the Indian startup called BlueLearn, since they already have their website made in React, their choice to build a mobile application was React Native, because you obviously, like since they were already working with React for their website, React Native seemed like the obvious choice to go with. There are a lot of companies that use Flutter. One of this is Zerodha. If you work with, if you are investing in stock market, so you must have heard about Zerodha. And there are other companies like Front Row that use Flutter for their applications. There are bigger companies like Coinbase, a cryptocurrency application that uses React Native, and they have very interesting blogs on how they use it. Their engineering team writes all these blogs, and it's very interesting if you want to just read through. So the comparison mostly depends also on your use case as well, but there are a lot of companies that have previously migrated from one platform to another, and it totally depends on how you want to use or how you want to build your application. So this is like a brief architectural overview of like the Flutter system overview. So we have our framework. It uses the Dart language. Then we have an engine which like natively renders it, and then there is an embedder which uh, like has this render surface setup, the render, the thread setup, and event loop. So all this is there, and then there are two libraries, Material and Cupertino. Material for Android, Cupertino for iOS. Then we have like animation, painting, and all this available. So this is more of like some advanced concept that you can return to, but I like to take it up in my session so that it just gives you an overview of what all is available and how it works like under the hood. So yeah, and it is not about building for all these 6 different platforms. So Flutter, since it lets you build for all these mobile, web, iOS, desktop applications. So a lot of people ask me like, show me one application that runs on all these different platforms. But that is the problem, right? It's not about building for all these different platforms. It is about the advantage you have as a developers, which is on the basis of how much code you can reuse. So as developers, we are like really lazy. We use functions so that we don't have to repeat certain statements. Why not do that when we're writing code, right? When we're building applications. So let us say like you have built an application that adds 2 numbers. If you were doing it without Flutter, you must have to learn like and Kotlin, Java for your Android applications, and then later on, if you want to build the same application for iOS, you have to again learn how the same stuff is done in Swift and build an application. But with Flutter, what happens is like you'll have the same underlying code, like you will have that business logic of adding 2 numbers similar across platforms. The only changes like you possibly have to do is how you adapt your UI. So let us say you're running it on web, so you might have to make sure that if the user is launching your app in a desktop view, so they might want to see it different, like there should be some difference in UI. Whereas if they are running it on their mobile phone, you want to render it differently. If they're using an Android application, you can also maybe give them access to certain native features that you can't do on web directly. So maybe you're building a social media app, so they might need camera. You can do that easily on the mobile phone, right? And that is something Flutter comes in. So you can change this UI experience or the upper code, whereas your business logic would remain same across platforms, which is a very big advantage, when you're writing code for a company, because that way they can save time and energy. Instead of again and again writing some of their business logic for different platforms, they can save energy, they can get to market quickly, and that is when Flutter comes in. So on Flutter, everything is a widget. We write code in Dart. Flutter is the framework, and everything is a widget. And these widgets are sort of like Lego blocks. Once you get the hold of it, as in once you know how can you create these widgets and how you can, write your Flutter application, it's really, really easy. And it has a very small learning curve. Like if you want to start with Flutter, you can do over the weekend. And the the thing where you become an expert in a certain tech stack, that takes time, because that comes after you have worked on sufficient projects. So that might take you a bit longer, but the basic fundamentals of Flutter, they have a very small learning curve. So with Flutter, you as you go on, you learn about optimization, like how to optimize your Flutter app or how to add certain features that would help you. Like you learn about animations as you go, but that is for when you want to venture into this field. But if you want to just experience it, it has a very small learning curve, and you can just easily get started with it. So I have already shown it in code. Like we created a new Flutter project, and we saw like the main function. You don't have to worry about that. It had this run app, and which took in this my app widget. So by convention, like my app widget is always there. What we do is like we create different screens and services folders where all the rest of the code goes in. So we created a simple hello world on screen. It just said hello world, and it looked a bit better than the previous one. But that is all we did. but this was just to show you like how code is written in Flutter. Like you have your widget, you have a class which says homepage, and it just extends this stateless widget protocol, which is defined by the Google team. And you have your constructor. You don't have to worry about the constructor, but what it has is something called the build function. So the build function basically tells the framework, right? It just tells the framework what you want to show on screen. In our case, we are returning something called text. Like we are returning this text called hello world to the screen, and that is what we are seeing on screen. Hello world is visible on screen right here, and this is another widget scaffold which I have used so that this font appears better. But as you go with Flutter, you will learn what it is and just get to know it better. But this is the most basic code. Like it tells Flutter what to return on screen, and you can just pass in the text that you want to show. It will build the hello world application. Maybe you want to show like a button. So how would you do that? Like there are different button options available. So I'll get rid of this text widget. Instead, I would do something like elevated button, and it takes in something called child, which is again the text. I will edit this text to say something like click me. All right. And we're getting this red line under it because with buttons, we also have to define something called an on pressed. So on press just tells Flutter like what to do when this button is pressed, and we'll just keep it empty function for now. Like this is the parameters and this is the statements, and we have kept it empty for now. I will refresh it. I will do something called a hot restart, and I should immediately, like as I write code, I should immediately see the changes on screen, and you can see like click me here, and this is a button. This is a simple button that we just created. So you can go on, like if you have some UI designs that you want to build, you can just see those designs, and you can write correspondingly code for it. Like I just did, I wanted to add a button, I added a button on screen, and you can even click on it. If I'll add certain statements in it, I can make it do something like print, maybe say hello to screen, close this off. Let us see if it's working fine in the terminal. I can open my terminal here. Okay, so you can see like hello printed out to the terminal, right? Similarly, you can do a lot of things. For in our case, we just did this print hello, but if you'll click on button, you can do like different things with it. And this is just the basic code. So this is how easy it is to write code in Flutter. That was the major objective out of this demonstration. So yeah. Uh, Also now I wanted to also share about like the different opportunities that are available in Flutter. So we are right now like a 700 plus developer community, and we mostly talk about app development, Flutter, and also native Android development. We have mentors for that. So if you want to join in, you can go over to teamaditya.co, search for it or Google, and it should take you to our website where there would be a Discord link and also a Flutter resource book, like a free Flutter resource book. If you are new to Flutter, you can just check that free Flutter resource book to get like free courses and all that stuff. And you can also join us on Discord. So we have all these people available to talk about, like mentors in both Android development, GDs. We have Google developer experts on Discord and a lot of developers. But the major takeaway that I want to talk about is like we recently had a session where we were talking to Pooja Bhaumik. She's a Google developer expert, and she joined us for a community event to talk about like Flutter interviews. And why this event was helpful for us is because we are not familiar with the industry experience, right? So like a lot of people don't know like what is happening out there in the industry. So we wanted to ask her like what are all the opportunities that are available in Flutter for people to take up. Now there are a lot of companies out there that use Flutter. There is Zerodha, which is a stockbroker application, and it's like really big. they handle like millions of transactions, and they handle all these transactions and on a daily basis. And for which is really cool given like how many transactions they handle in a day. Then there is a community based startup called Kuhu, which recently raised funding, and there is also Front Row. So if you have been like you must have seen different advertisements on Front Row. It is also a funded startup and it's using Flutter. So we'll go over to companies that use Flutter. All right, so like there are a lot of companies that are using Flutter. There is like Zerodha that I talked about. Then there are also there is Kuhu, which is like a which is also a community startup that basically lets creators manage their communities. But there is also Front Row, which is a learning and community startup. It raised 14 million. Then there is Bounce, which is a smart mobility solution. It's active in Bangalore and a lot of other cities in India. There is Zest Money, which is a buy now, pay later platform, and it also uses Flutter. Then there is Yockit, which is a community-driven online platform for like international education. And there are companies like Ola Electric. There is Unicard, Multiply, and Pink Villa too. Pink Villa uses it for their Android and iOS applications, and a lot of these companies like have built their applications in Flutter. So there was also a Flutter video on how Dream 11 uses it, but they are not using it currently. But like when they initially started out, they had built their application in Flutter. So Flutter, although being new, it's very powerful. Like you can build your full scale applications on it that handle millions of transactions. So people are worried. Like they ask me if it's even production ready. Like if they should be using Flutter for their production ready application. And right now, like I can say yes. Like you can use it for your production applications, or even for your bigger projects that you want to build in it. And there are a lot of resources out there for you to check out. So when starting out, right, what should you basically do if you want to become a Flutter developer? So for any tech stack, the first things that you can work with are like UI clones, because unlike in Android Studio, like you cannot drag and drop most of these elements and arrange them on screen. So you might have to practice how to arrange these elements on screen, and that is when UI clones help you. You can build beautiful applications with Flutter. Flutter gives you control of every pixel on screen, which is really cool. So you can modify most of the stuff that you want to do on screen, and Flutter would be really easy for it. So first thing that you can do is start with some UI clone projects, try to see how certain elements are arranged. If you don't want to do like UI clones of some big applications, what you can do is instead go over to a website like Dribble or Behance, where you can check out these designs and just try to replicate them in code, which would give you like hands-on experience on how to build some of these applications. Then you can go into something more try to look into audio integration. How can you play music? So you can build a music player or other such applications. And this would be a good second project to get started on. And other than that, like after you are acquainted with like the basic fundamentals of it, you can build a networking app. As developers, we have to work with APIs a lot. We have to know how JSON parsing is done in any tech stack. So you can build a news application or possibly a weather application, and you can learn about HTTP requests, how they are made inside your Flutter application. And then there are databases. You might have to save some data, so you will have to learn database integration in Flutter. The Google database has very, very simple integration. So you can easily do, and you can check out their documentation at flutterfire.com. and it's very easy to get started on. And really cool database. There's AppRide, which is also very good. And then you can also build custom backends with like Node, and you can also use SQLite, like a local database. So authentication, you have to learn about CRUD operations, like how can you create, read, update, and delete data, storage, and other features, like if you want to use them, analytics that are provided by some databases. So once you do all that stuff, like once you figure out the HTTP request, the JSON part of it, databases, you have learned a lot. And initially, if you were to ask me like when should we start interning, I would say like when you're learning Flutter, the curve is very small. Like if you download Flutter, okay, you run a project, you maybe build a small application in it, you know a lot of it. And if you're done with the UI part, you can start applying for internships and other such opportunities, because you learn a lot more when you're working on certain projects, when you're trying to solve some of these problems. And when I did my first internship, I did not know a lot of Flutter. I just knew like how to arrange certain elements on screen, and most of my responsive side, like how to make my applications more responsive to different screen sizes, and like how to build better UI. I learned it while doing internship. Like I wasn't aware about certain things, so I asked my coordinator to help me, and he guided me a lot. So that is when like you learn most of the stuff, and you don't have to be an expert to just go and do an internship, and you can easily get started with one. So you can learn databases after, you can learn about like JSON too as you go with your work, right? So after you do that, all that stuff, then there is the state management question. And if you will work with Flutter enough, you'll know like this is one of the most hot topics in the Flutter community. State management, what it does is basically lets you get data across screens and manage the state of your application. Like for, like, let us say your application is connected to the internet. You want to show certain things, but if it's not connected to the internet, you want to show a message. For a lot of your work, you can go without state management. And I say that because I have built applications, I've built client applications that don't generally use state management as such, but there could be cases where you want to use it. So that is something you can look into, like some of the state management concepts. And there are a lot of options available. You can choose any one of them, whichever you prefer, and build projects in it. So one of the project ideas with state management would be an e-commerce application, because that way you will like build a complete application to buy and create um like create invoices, or maybe just add to cart. So you learn about state management and also about payment integration. So as Flutter continues to grow, there are a lot of platforms out there that are allowing you to integrate payment. There is the Google Pay package for easier payment integration. Then there is like Paytm has its documentation. So let me create a game, maybe start with animations in Flutter, physics and motion. There is also a package, I forgot its name, but it's like they let you easily build mobile app games in Flutter. So with that all like done, that was most of it. Like these were some of the projects that you can take up. And we have already talked about these companies, but what I want to point out real quick, and that is something Pooja ma'am mentioned as well. So if you want to go into these roles of being a Flutter developer at a startup, you need to know some part of the Android native development. And why? Because a lot of companies, what they do is Pooja ma'am mentioned it, like the company she was working at, they used to put out some of the job postings as Android developer. Like they would post out an opening for an Android developer instead of directly a Flutter developer. Why? Because for Android developers who have been working with native side of things, it's very easy to learn Flutter and work with it. So you have to know as a Flutter developer some basic Android stuff, how you can build applications in it. And it goes hand in hand, as in if you are a Flutter developer, learn about native Android development. If you are a native developer, maybe learn about Flutter, because it's just sort of an extension, but it would give you a side of things. Maybe learning Flutter could be a change that you love. Like you will be able to create applications for all these different platforms and also for web. So without having to learn web development at all. So that would be a big advantage. If you are a college student, Flutter would basically take care of all your projects, right? You'll have applications for different platforms to add to your resume, and you can like focus on DSA or other side of things, and your projects would be done basically, with Flutter. So as college students is a real advantage. I'm also in my third year, and I know like what happens on campus. Like you barely get time, so Flutter could be good. So yeah, I think that would be it. If you have any questions, like I can see some in chat, so let's take them up. And if you have any questions, you can always speak up. If you want to, like, we can make it into a discussion. And if you still after even after this session, if there's active there, so you can post your questions there. And you can also join the community teamaditya.co. You can join us on Discord. There are other mentors to take it up. There's me. You can tag me in any of your questions, and I will try to respond. Okay. This is, do we have to do anything extra for making it multi-platform, or does it on its own? Mostly, like if you have a Flutter application, like let us say this is the default code that I was showing. Give me a minute. Yeah, so this is the default code that I was showing. And if I have to run it, it is working fine on web, right? Right now it's working fine on web. But if I'll connect my Android emulator here, like if right now it just says 2 devices connected, but if I'll connect, maybe if I'll run my Android emulator, it would show that as well. If I'll connect my mobile phone, it would show that as well. And if I'll run my application on it, like if I'll just hit run, when the device I want to run it on is selected, the application would run on itself. Like you don't have to do anything extra for that. But if you want to later on make some changes that are platform specific, you can do that as well. Maybe let us say you want to check if your application is running on Android or not. So if it's running on Android, you want to show certain things. If it's not running on Android, you don't want to show them. So you can do that as well. You don't have to do anything extra in that case. All right. So after this is video widget equivalent to views in Android. Yes, possibly. I am not much of a Android side of, like, I haven't worked as much with Android, but yeah, I guess it's equivalent to views. Thank you so much. Um,
Okay.
So yeah, let me know if there are any questions other than this, and if you want me to repeat anything, or if you feel something was done too fast, you can mention that as well.
Okay, thank you, Aditya, for taking this excellent session. So now the session is open for questions. If anyone has any question, please do mention it in the chat box. Aditya is still here for around 10 to 15 minutes. He can answer your doubts. Aditya, I hope that's all right.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. So
Let me know, like, if my voice breaks up. I am in my hostel and Wi-Fi is a bit laggy.
right, of course, I will surely mention that.
Yeah.
Okay, so if no one has any questions, I have a few questions of my own.
Yeah, sure.
As we know, like Flutter is used to make cross-platform applications. So there is a possibility that for one code base, since there are so many applications built, the app size of any Flutter app will be much larger than compared to native Android or native iOS. So how can we optimize that application size?
So like a lot of things that you do, you can learn Flutter over the weekend, but a lot of the optimization things that you have to do come as you grow in Flutter. So you have to learn them as you go. But when you're, like, let us say you're building a Android release, right? So it would only have that Android side of things, because you're building it for a particular platform. So in Flutter, we run a command called Flutter build, and it would do that only for Android. So the only things that would go in that project would be the Flutter Engine, because you'll need Flutter Engine to render your code natively, and only the Android side, like permissions and all that, you have done. It would not have the iOS and all that stuff in it. So so you don't have to worry a lot about that.
Okay, so that clears up a lot of things. My next question is, as a fresher, if I am applying
Mhm.
for jobs which is primarily related to Flutter, so how do I prepare for that job interview as a fresher?
All
Or
right,
what
so
skill levels do I
yeah.
need?
Mhm. So this is something like we like since I am not a working professional, so I might not be qualified for that. But we asked like Pooja ma'am to the same question, as in what should we know as freshers if we want to go into this field. So the first thing that she mentioned was like if we are like only Flutter developers, that might be a bit blown, like not as good. You need to know certain parts of native Android development as well. And she mentioned that there is a lot of demand for Swift iOS developers because there aren't many in India, possibly because a lot of people don't have MacBook. And to like create applications for Swift iOS, you need Xcode to do certain changes. So that was something she mentioned. And we asked her like about the salary and all that stuff, but she mentioned like if you're building your profile around it, if you're active in the community, a lot of people wouldn't take your they wouldn't ask you many questions. They would offer you internships and also other such opportunities. So building a profile would be a lot helpful. And it's very simple steps like share what you're working on, what you're building, and all that. And other than that, the other way is like knowing about some of the basic things in Flutter. And these basic things are just working with the JSON side, JSON HTTP API request. Then there are some databases that you want to know about. Once you know that networking, you know most of it in Flutter, then you can work with the UI things, how to create some good UIs, create some GitHub projects, showcase your work there. And other than that, just learn about animations. That would be enough. And that would like work mostly in your favor. Like you don't have to do much then. Also, like mostly in Flutter, we don't have as divided roles. Like we can give you the title of front end or back end developer, but we don't have that division in Flutter specifically to say. So these roles are mostly combined. Like if someone is working on the UI things, they can also learn about backend. So yeah, like you don't have much distinction on it, but I would recommend profile building wala path, kyunki that way there are better chances of you getting the job.
Right, right. That clears up a lot of things. Akash Sena has a question. Like
Yeah.
working on application
Mm.
responsiveness would be tedious task
Yeah.
since we are making it for multiple platforms using the same code base.
Yeah, it would be tedious, but how it would work, right? If you're working on if you're building an application for Android iOS, mostly what you will have to do is worry about the screen size. You can resize your widgets and other elements according to it. The same would work on web view for mobile, like Android web page on your
Aditya, your voice is breaking a little bit.
yeah. Really sorry about that.
Yeah, no
Uh,
issues.
so I was saying ki, I hope it's better now. I keep switching my connection from one network.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
it's
so. It's I was saying ki, जैसे the Android iOS, how it's seen on Android iOS and the mobile web view would almost be similar, and you have to make certain changes for how it looks on the web. So mostly if you're working, maybe target one device at the start. Like if you are building an application, maybe worry about how it would look on Android and do certain things with it. And most of the responsive part, like there are a lot of options available in Flutter, so you don't have to worry about each of these devices. Like you just need to put in certain checks. So if you'll put in those checks, it would mostly run on any platform. And like you might have to give it a certain attention, but it's not that much effort.
right.
Yeah.
I hope that clears up your doubt, Akash. I have one more question for you, Aditya. Since
Mhm.
you mentioned that you are a third year student as well, I'm
Yeah.
sure you are like practicing DSA and stuff.
Mhm.
So, how do you balance your like development learning curve of your
Mhm.
development process along with the practice of your DSA? Like, how do you balance your routine for that? That is one personal question that I wanted to ask.
Yeah. So, DSA is important for any developer. Like you need to know the data structures and algorithms that you work with. And as a third year student, I've been doing it more recently, more often. I used to do DSA a lot in my first year, but then I stopped. I did a lot of development in my second. Now I'm back to DSA in my third. But what I want to basically focus on is like I do most of it on the weekends, because that is when I have the most time. Like if I'm working with the community as well, I do that on the weekends. And before this, like my college was off, like online, so then I had a lot of the time on my hands. But right now with offline college, it has gotten big, like difficult. I wouldn't say it's very easy, but yeah, still figuring it out, a lot of the stuff. But I would say, like, take out time for it. Like if you really want to learn something, try to do little by little, like build a small project, build some part of it, come back to it next day, and all try to continue on that, and you'll get a lot far by the end of it.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing your knowledge with us. And we would definitely reach out to you if you have like any more doubts regarding Flutter and everything. And
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining. And I'm sure everyone has learned something new today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Like, feel free to reach out on any of the platforms, like mostly LinkedIn because I'm more active there. But if you want to reach out on Discord as well, that would be fine. And I will try to answer any questions. Even after this, if you go into Flutter development, if you're looking for any opportunities, so you can reach out. I have some with that. So yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you to the code chef and
Thank you so
all
much,
the
Aditya, for
teams.
joining.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. I would request the participants to stay back because we have a little quiz for you guys. So, yeah, so the thing is, I want you guys to log into mentimeter.com and give the code of 25184519. Please do answer the quiz because there will be a prize for the winner, which will be from hyphen.com, who is our sponsor for this bootcamp, with whose partnership we are doing it. So let me just present my screen. Yeah, I hope my screen is visible. Can anyone please mention if my screen is visible? Okay, we have 8 participants. Or is it 3? I don't know. Okay. 4. There are 74 participants. Please do join. It's a very small quiz. If someone wants to say something, they can unmute themselves and speak up. And also after the quiz, the winner has to like mail to Codechef IEMK. We will share the email down below in the chat box for claiming your prize. And also we will have a feedback form. So please do fill it up before you go. Yes, that's it. Come on, please, more participants. And if someone wants to talk to me, or if they have any questions regarding Flutter or anything regarding this session, please do mention. The session is open for all. Please do turn on your mic and speak. It's getting weird talking by myself. 19 participants. Where are the rest? Guys, please
Hello.
do join. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, Jyoti.
I'm saying that can you share the link?
Of course. Sure. Just a minute. Where is the chat? Oh, okay. Just wait. Chat का option क्यों नहीं दिख रहा भाई? Okay, yeah, here is it. Yeah, I have shared the link. Please check it out. It is in the chat box. Or I will just share it to everyone. Yeah. "23 participants." Let's wait till the number is 30 and then we will start the quiz. I hope everyone can see my screen. I'm sorry about that.
Hello.
Yes.
I'm saying that the link which you have shared, it is not of the questions, like it's giving the screen of the answers, I think so.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. Just a minute. So it is mentimeter.com. And how do you delete it? I don't think anyone can delete it. Okay. So I guess we will have a lot of winners today. So I will just start the quiz. And if you have seen the answers, please do not answer it. It was my mistake. I'm really sorry for that. Okay. So 12 people have answered correctly. 3 have answered wrong. This is the leaderboard till now. Let's move on to the next question. Yeah. And the website is menti.com. I was wrong again. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Keep the answers coming in. Keep the answers coming in. Nice. Okay. Let's check the leaderboard. Wow. That's really close. "33 participants till now." What is meant by SDK? Nice. Okay. Right. Moving on to the next question. The session is getting heated up. Most of you guys are giving the correct answers. It will be difficult for us to decide on who is the winner. There will be multiple winners today. I am sure of that. Okay, that's really good. Let's see how it goes. Nice. And the last question for today's quiz. What is the best IDE for Flutter development? Is it IntelliJ IDEA, Android Studio, or Visual Studio Code, or all of the above? The choice is yours. 5 seconds. Okay, nice. Actually, you can develop in any one of the above IDEs, but the rest is upon your preferences. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our quiz. Let's see who is the winner. Okay, so we have Akash Sinha, Shondipon, and what's his name? Capture. Acha, Capture. Who is Capture? अरे यार सही नाम से तो
हाँ भैया
हाँ नाम बताओ यार
चेतक चेतक
अरे यार सही नाम देते भाई you should have given your proper name brother. Okay, so Akash Sinha, Shondipon, and Chetak Gorai, you guys have won the quiz. Congratulations. I will just stop sharing, and the rest of you, I'm sorry that you could not become the winner, but better luck next time. Now, those who have won the quiz, please do give a mail here to get your prizes at codechefiemcal@gmail.com. And for getting your certificates for joining in this session, please fill up this, please fill up this feedback form, right? Hello, koi to kuch bolo yaar.
Yeah, thank you for the bootcamp.
Thank you so much for joining in. And before you leave, please do fill up the feedback form. Okay, thank you so much. This session, as of now, is officially over, along with the bootcamp, which is also officially over. Thank you so much, guys, for joining in. It really kept up our motivation, and we will see you again for more such future bootcamps. Thank you.